Hey everybody, Rock DIY here. This is a public service announcement, basically just to warn others because this is what happened to me. I have this 2021 Ford F-150 Lariat, full hybrid, power boost. I bought this locally from a local dealership, Ford dealership. 2 weeks after I purchased it, I had the 21S56 recall, which is the underbody panels, but I already had the underbody panel issue way before the recall came out. 2 weeks after I purchased my truck, I had some strange noises underneath my truck. Took me a little while to figure out what it was. Found out one of the insulator panels underneath, right next to the drive shaft, was not adhering properly, and it was coming down and rubbing on the drive shaft. What I discovered is that this panel right here is hanging down, and it's got an adhesive on the back side, so it should be stuck up there. And if you look right there on the corner of this panel, it's kind of hard to see, but it's worn right there where it's been sitting on the drive shaft. When the vehicle is idle, you would not hear or see anything, so it was really difficult to determine where it was. I ended up putting a GoPro underneath my truck and drove around. I also got in the back of the truck while my son was driving it, trying to determine what was going on. I started trying to schedule an appointment with my local dealership, could not get a hold of anybody. Nobody would return calls. I called to speak to people by name, but all that was happening is I would get transferred to a voicemail every time and then not get any return calls. Gave up for a little while. The official recall notice did not actually come out until 31 January. I got the notice 7 February, I believe, and it said there was a chance of this happening. Underbody insulator panels could come into contact with the drive shaft and cause the drive shaft to shatter, or come into contact with the ground, causing injury or accident. And like I said, I gave up on trying to get an appointment for a little while. I had other things going on, and then eventually picked it back up and finally was able to speak to somebody, and I made a comment about how difficult it was to get an appointment. Well, actually, I got to back up because could not get an appointment still after attempting to get a hold of my local dealership again. So I contacted Ford customer service, and they assisted me in getting an appointment at another dealership within my area, except it was actually quite a ways away. I think it was like a 45-minute to an hour drive away. So I had that appointment, but I still attempted to get an appointment with my local dealership because I'd prefer to have my vehicle serviced at a local dealership versus having to take it a long distance away from the house. Ford attempted to assist me, got me that appointment, and unfortunately that dealership, the Friday before my appointment that was on Monday morning, called me and told me they could not do the recall repair because they didn't have the parts.
Give me a call. I know you have an appointment on Monday at 8 o'clock for the recall that we talked about. Unfortunately, every part that I'm supposed to use for the inspection, I can no longer get through Ford right at this moment. So I'm having to postpone some of my appointments about these recalls. If you would, give me a call. Thank you.
The parts and the procedure is outlined on the National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration website. It's also outlined on ford.oem.dtc or DTIC. All the tools, procedure that's supposed to be done is all there. And then that's just a note because that was an issue that I had. So the one dealership canceled the appointment, and then I eventually got an appointment with my local dealership. When I got the appointment, I actually spoke to the service advisor, one of two service advisors. Originally, I was told there was only one. I spoke to the one and expressed my frustration with trying to get an appointment with them, and immediately became very defensive, and her whole attitude changed, and I ended up with an appointment with them 2.5 months after the fact. I went to the appointment, and well, originally they told me it would only take the morning. I was told I would get an update phone call. Never got a phone call. And then the next morning I called, and they said it would be ready by noon. And then a half hour later I was told my truck was ready, which was messed up because I didn't have transportation. My son went to work But had I known when my truck would actually be ready, I could have avoided having issues with transportation. So the recall repair was done, got home, and I'm not just one of those people that assumes that when you take your car in for repair that they've done it or they've done it right. And I'm no expert, but I am mechanically inclined. So I crawled up under the truck since I knew what it had already looked like previously, and I could see that the work was done sloppily. And the issue was that there were supposed to be 5 rivets or plastic pieces that were supposed to go in through the insulator panel into the floor of the truck to keep these up. But there was also supposed to be sealant used, and on my truck, the 5 different spots that were done, it looked like the sealant was just sloppily put on. And then there were also some gaps where it looked like it wasn't actually sealing these plugs that were put in. So I mentioned that, and of course when I spoke to the service advisor, because she followed up with me and asked me how the service went, I said I didn't really have any issues with the actual service other than an issue with the actual repair. Again, same woman, she became very defensive and immediately told me that the tech did the work properly. The service manager inspected the tech's work and determined that it was done properly. And she told me this right from the get-go, like she had already looked into it. I don't know how she would have known, and I got it, when you work within a business or a company, you will defend other people's work, but you got to be careful with that because sometimes it can bite you in the butt. And I think in this case, it created an issue. So what I had done was post a review. I do post good and bad reviews, and in this case I posted a bad review. Wasn't fully detailed, just basically said that the service was done poorly and there was attitude and everything. And also I have to say that in this case I did not get angry, I did not raise my voice, I didn't use any profanity. I just told her that I was dissatisfied, and then it was almost like I got questioned as to how I would know whether it was done properly or not, and I explained how I knew. And again, in this case, it seemed like she was offended at the fact that I was trying to tell them how to do their job, but I wasn't telling them how to do their job. I was asking for me to come back to the dealership and have them look over it again to ensure it was done properly. Because what I didn't know is that in this case, this wasn't something that had been done before. It was a new issue on certain models of the Ford F-150. So it was a relatively new repair. So by all means, I think I had a right to question whether they had done it properly, because did they actually follow the proper procedure? They may not have if they had not done it before. They could have assumed that they were doing it properly. Back to my review, it was basically a 1-star review, and if I could have gave a crumbled star review, I would have gave that, because just the defensiveness, the lack of listening to me, I thought it was very unprofessional. I had talked to the service advisor several other times, and she basically said, hey, want to make this up, we want to make it right with you. She offered a 30% discount on a future service or part or whatever. I didn't take her up on it, and then I ended up having more issues with my truck. Within 2 weeks of having this recall service done on my truck, I went out to my truck was completely dead, put a voltage meter on it, and it was like 3.57 volts. So I jump started it. There was actually a whole bunch of errors that kept coming up on the screen, and it was like hill assist not available, backup brake assistance unavailable. The brakes didn't even function properly. It's like the brake just sunk down to the floor of the truck, and so I didn't really go anywhere. And then several days later, went back out to the truck again. The voltage was down again. I had to jump start it. Contacted this same service advisor and said, hey, and in my head this was an opportunity to improve your service or make me feel better about you doing services on my vehicle. Appointment was made, went into the dealership, and everything was done. I got out onto the main road right outside the dealership, and as I'm going down the road, all these error messages pop up on the screen, and I'm driving down the road and go to press on the brakes, and it was like pressing 2 plates of butter against each other because there was almost no brake. And the good thing is that this is typically a very busy road, but at the time that it was right after everybody gets to work, so there weren't that many. It was around 9:30 in the morning. All of a sudden my truck would screech to a skidding stop, and I was already over 2 miles down the road, so it wasn't like I was right next to the dealership. And so I'm infuriated because I was like, gave them an opportunity to fix this, and here I am dealing with another issue right away. So I continued to drive home, because even if I did go to the dealership, they probably wouldn't look at it right away, and then I would be out of my truck for even longer, although I ended up basically without my truck for a little while anyway, because I got it home, parked it, and that same day the service advisor, I'm assuming because it was the dealership's phone number that showed up on my phone, but I was pretty upset about the whole situation that I didn't answer my phone, and parked my truck, left it, came out later on, started it up, no error alerts, pressed the brakes, brake worked fine, drove it down the driveway a little ways, came back, no issues whatsoever. So I don't know if it was just something that had to cycle through or not. But here's the biggest thing about this whole issue now. So I have this truck that's less than a year old, and I bought it at a local dealership, and now I find out that, and this was on 7 June 22, I found out that the service advisor had gotten me banned from this dealership. I say banned, but it's really refusal to service my vehicle without any explanation. The answer I got was, well, I said who made the decision and what was the reason, and they basically said, the service advisor had said, it was determined by us that we will no longer service your vehicle due to your dissatisfaction with your services, and we feel that if we service your vehicle again, that this would be reoccurring. So one complaint, and what I really think this boils down to is it wasn't so much of what I said over the phone or in emails to the service advisor. I think at some point my review was seen by the service advisor, the owner, the GM, whoever, because there was never any mention whatsoever that they were considering my vehicle for no longer being serviced at this dealership. And I only found this out on 7 June because I had some additional recalls that came in and some customer satisfaction program notices that came in basically around the same time. So I was like, okay, I'll just email this same person, this same service advisor. I had completely forgot about, the review. I completely forgot about, any issues. I didn't assume there would be a grudge that would be held, nor did I expect that there would be retaliation for a poor review. And I do wholeheartedly believe that this is retaliation towards me over a bad review, because there was no mention. Over 2 months had gone by. I was never told anything about the possibility of my vehicle no longer being able to be serviced. After this lady, the service advisor, had told me that I was no longer welcome at this dealership, I sent her a follow-up email, asked a few questions, and I said, okay, who made the decision? Because I'd like to know. And the only thing I got was upper management, but she didn't answer any of my other questions other than to say upper management. I was surprised and found it somewhat childish to just, why would you not tell me who made the decision? Do you have something to hide? Did you make the decision and you're trying to hide behind saying it's upper management? Or also, could it be that you gave a one-sided story to management and management said, okay, go ahead and not offer services to this person anymore? I contacted this dealership, spoke to the receptionist, and as usual, anybody you ask to speak to, you cannot actually speak to somebody because it goes right to voicemail, and then they never return any phone calls. And that was the same case on this day. But I also think, and I don't know 100% for sure, but I also think I was blacklisted, and so they probably have a list of people at the receptionist desk that basically says if these people call, do not transfer them or do not speak to them. And I mean, it almost seems that way, because when I did call and speak to the receptionist, sometimes you catch another woman who answers the phone who's not the receptionist. I think she's a cashier. But when I was calling and spoke to the receptionist and I said, I'm trying to figure out who to speak to file a complaint against the service department, she asked me what my name was. And I could tell almost immediately her attitude and the way she spoke to me changed drastically. Like she knew who I was because she had been told something. I asked her who I needed to speak to. And of course, she gives me the name of another woman that works in the same office that I have the issue with. And I know better. I mean, two people that work that close in an office who've been working together for a while, they either hate each other or they're very close. And I think in this case, they are very close, and I thought it was inappropriate. And I know it's not really the receptionist's business to determine who I need to speak to, but I was hoping she would point me in the right direction and it wouldn't be within the same office, because the service advisors are only one part of the service department. And so she gave me the name of the service manager, who doesn't necessarily work in the same office, works in more towards where the work is conducted on vehicles. And of course I recognize the name because this is a guy that I got referred to in the past. I was told that he was going to contact me when I had mentioned my first complaint, and I was told he was going to contact me. I waited. I assumed that phone call was going to be the same day or the next day. He ended up calling while I was in the middle of doing some work on a tractor. He left a message, and of course, I called him back. He didn't answer, which is the norm for this business. And I ended up leaving a message and never heard back from him, which again is the norm. Well, the bottom line of this whole thing is, if you live near your local dealership and you expect that you're going to have all your services done at this local dealership, whatever you do, always give a 5-star review. Basically lie, because I mean, if you're dissatisfied, you should be able to give what you want. But if you give a bad review, you may be retaliated against. And it's not just so much, I mean, I could just say, okay, no problem, I'll just go somewhere else and get my vehicle serviced. But considering gas prices, having to drive, the inconvenience of having to go somewhere else. Other thing is, the warranty on this truck is tied to this dealership, called the Triton Protect warranty. So now, because I cannot have my vehicle serviced here, I've now lost the ability that if in the future I need warranty work, if I do the warranty work at my home dealership, place that I purchased the truck, I don't have a deductible. But now, because I cannot get services here, I have to go elsewhere. So under this Triton Protect plan, every time I go in for a warranty repair, it will cost me $100, a deductible of $100. And I have to add one additional thing to this, because one of the original answers as to why there were issues with the original recall repair was that it was the pandemic, it was a shortage of personnel and shortage of parts, and I was apologized to. But now when I look back at it, well, one of the other things they said is that they're overwhelmed with the amount of work that needs to be done, and they only do 2 service recalls a week at this dealership. It may be the same elsewhere, but they only schedule 2 service recalls a week. And that's why I was told that it was scheduled so far out, because there were so many recall repairs. And it more than likely is true. But I think besides being butthurt by the review and retaliating against me, I think this also could be connected to the warranty, because my warranty is basically, I mean, I'll get the warranty work done, but I'm going to have to pay every time. And I've already talked Triton Protect, and it cannot be transferred because the dealership I bought it at is the dealership I bought it at. They can't just say that I bought it at another dealership and have the same procedure in place. I also think if you're having issues with being able to handle the workflow at your business, why not get rid of some of your customers? Because in this case, I mean, they got rid of me and they don't have to worry about doing any repairs. They have one less truck they have to do repairs on. But if this is a very common thing, that could possibly be true. I don't know for sure, but I mean, they eliminate a customer who doesn't pay for anything at this time, and they could potentially add paying customers when they kick me to the curb. Overall, I mean, fine with having to go elsewhere. It would be nice that I wouldn't have to pay a warranty deductible elsewhere, regardless if they apologize or anything, because they haven't. I have no desire to ever go back to this dealership. It's when you're retaliated against for giving them a poor review, I'm not gonna bow down and give you a great review just because. Own up to the review, fix your internal issues. Because I've looked, and they've got quite a few reviews, and I looked up this dealership. There are a lot of complaints about being retaliated against. Not necessarily no longer offering services. There are some, but there are complaints against them for retaliation issues. And then I also thought it was funny that when I was on the looking up Google reviews on this dealership, the person who ultimately made the decision to have me removed from getting service at this dealership, this same person, this service advisor, has an online review, a 5-star online review of the dealership she works for. I mean, to me, that's a conflict of interest. You can't, I mean, to me, it looked like somebody had told her, hey, make sure you give us a 5-star review so that we can bump up our reviews. Because I believe, I have to look it up to make sure, but I believe they were at a 3.7 star review. But then it also looks like they went on a campaign to boost their reviews. And I didn't necessarily go on Google reviews just to find out if an employee did a review of the place they work for. It was probably like the 5th or 6th review, and I recognized the name right away because it's not a very common last name. The last thing that I've done is I wrote a complaint, and I was going to post it to the Better Business Bureau website. And when you post it, before it's actually posted, it's sent to whoever you're complaining against. They have an opportunity to respond, and then their response goes back to the Better Business Bureau, and then the Better Business Bureau reviews both my complaint and their answer, and then posts it to the Better Business Bureau website. I was going to post it and then found out there was a word limit, so I had to go back through it, hack it all up, basically make it sound like I didn't know how to talk, because that's what it looks like when you read it now. But I was trying to leave all the relevant details, and then when I tried to post it, I found this out and didn't realize that it only copied like the top portion, and so I didn't finish it. And then I went back and rewrote it. I went from 4 pages to, like, I think it had to be less than 815 words in order to be able to see the whole thing on the website. And then while I was doing this, I also had the complete original version of my complaint in a separate document, and basically said, okay, I'll give them an opportunity to respond to my complaint by just emailing it to them. So I emailed it over a week ago, and I've heard from no one. So, and I expected that. And of course, they can just say, well, we never got it, or it went to my junk mail, or, you know, any number of excuses just to not deal with me. But my intent is to post my complaint publicly. I will post it on the Better Business Bureau website. I will put it on Yelp. I will put it on Google reviews. In no way do I think this is defamation. It's definitely not libel. If it was libel, I would have said it in person, but in this case, my review is printed, so they can claim it's defamation, but I only stated facts. I didn't post anything that wasn't true. So they'll have a difficult time trying to make it about defamation or libel. Their service department is horrible. They have employees that don't respect customers, and at the end of the day, to me, this was retaliation.